Welcome back to the program. It's time for Opinion Court. Get in touch with us. 22422, that is our SMS line. I'll introduce my panel to you once more, and our topic. To my right is Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., who's joining us after a little bit of a break.
Oh, yes.
Yes, good to see you again.
Yeah,
next to him is Edward Kisiangani, who is our resident political analyst. And to my left is Njeri Thorne, who is a political communications consultant, and you're all welcome to the program. We are, of course, as I mentioned earlier, discussing Trump's election win, the president-elect of the United States. But before we get into that, we want to quickly dispense of the big political news this evening, gentlemen and lady, which is Martha Karua, who has been a strong opposer of President Uhuru Kenyatta, has finally endorsed him and is running for the Kirinyaga seat. Your quick thoughts on that, Njeri?
Firstly, I don't think she's been an opposer of the president himself, perhaps of the party being in opposition, and even when she was working in opposition, she was agreeing with things on a step-by-step basis. It wasn't a sort of blanket disagreement with government, which was very healthy for the democracy in that there was criticism coming from the right place. But as we come into elections, you do need to align yourself, and what she's done is genius, which is align yourself with the winning party.
Senator?
Politics 101. The more things change, the more they remain the same. Politics is local, nothing new. Her comment about corruption, I'm surprised, because she was at the forefront of challenging corruption in Jubilee government. She was at the forefront about amendment to the constitution. But as far as I'm concerned, what she has done is exercise her right, like everybody can, to join the whatever persuasion. But to reduce yourself to that sort of argument when she had profiled herself as a national leader, to me is it's not on at all. That you can go that local. I can understand some of the members of parliament who have said, from presidential candidate to governor. No, to the level that the people have spoken, and therefore, since they want this, that is the reason why I've chosen to do it. I've had, for example, an argument by the legislator nominated from ODM who is vying in Ruiru, that that's what they want. But for her, we had categorized at a different level. But again, I said, without criticizing so much, this is a country where everybody has got their political rights, and if you think that is a bombshell, you wait and see. There's going to be more coming.
People leaving ODM?
People running all over the place and claiming loyalty all over the place. It's going to happen.
All right, Prof.
Our politics is highly ethnicized. And you can see that she's not talking about becoming governor to bring water to the people of Kirinyaga or improve health care or infrastructure. She's running to become governor because the main factor is to support President Uhuru Kenyatta. So if you
really, or is it the other way around, that she wants to become governor and therefore needs to support?
I think so.
Yes, I think that is a good way of putting it. But the point is that the president is at the heart of her change of heart, and she's telling people that everybody supports the president in this region, and if I don't support the president, I will lose. So it is not about good governance or bringing, improving the quality of life of the people of Kirinyaga.
I think the two can go hand in hand. She can support the president
you see,
and want to be in good governance.
After, for example, she has already criticized the president for a very long time on the matters of corruption and so on. So what has changed? Because if you associate with somebody you think
even within the party has
been making mistakes, does she now say the president has changed and now the president is doing the right thing? It's a matter of
she says she supports the president for 2022. She hasn't said anything more than that.
2017.
Sorry, for 2017.
Yes.
She supports the president.
I thought,
and there's no harm in that. And the two can go hand in hand. They're not mutually exclusive.
But why?
You can support the presidency and you can use that to get in because that is the
why would you privilege an individual instead of the issues that affect the people of Kirinyaga?
Let's listen to Prof.
Why would you privilege the name of an individual rather than the problems facing the people of Kirinyaga?
Perhaps that is yet to come, Prof.
Yes.
In my case, let me just tell you that if I was the president, I would not be flattered by by the fact that somebody seems to support me.
I think he enjoys any support.
This Johnny come lately and any other presidential candidate.
She's desperate to become governor.
Should be careful about people who change heart. You know the story about Saul becoming Paul on the road to Damascus. That doesn't apply in politics.
What is she saying? That the president is a determinant factor in anybody for anybody who wants to be elected in central Kenya, and even Kirinyaga in particular. So I am ready to shed off my principles, forget about it, vomit on them, as long as they vote.
We're yet to hear a lot more. She's dealt with CORD and she's dealt with Jubilee. She's clearly chosen Jubilee. So let's hear. Maybe she left CORD for one reason or another.
All right, let's leave it at that, because we're yet to see on what platform exactly she'll be campaigning on, etc. I'm sure that is to come. And let's switch gears now to the election, of course, of Donald Trump as President of the United States, something that not only, I think, stunned the media in the United States, but really shocked the rest of the world. He's done what many had thought was unthinkable. Are you drawing any political lessons from that, Senator?
Of course, that the media are not always correct. Opinion polls are not always correct. But we all misunderstand democracy. We are all living in some lofty places, misunderstand everything, because I've just given an example of what Martha Karua has done and what Trump has done. Politics is local. He went absolutely local about Americans, we need to reclaim our country back, all those sorts of things. But so, I mean, in the end, there's no difference between the Americans and Kenyans in terms of how we think about elections. We vote emotionally. There's no merit. If you look at the portfolio of the people who voted for him vis-a-vis voting for Hillary Clinton, you then conclude that in the end, the free will of the people is determined by very few factors, as opposed to merits or issues or things that you and I think that should be on the table. So, I mean, a man insults everybody under the sun, and they elected.
And the derivative is that he's honest.
And he's honest about it.
Not he's rude and brash, it's that he's honest.
He calls you a cow, you say yes sir, and then you vote for him. I mean, and you vote for him. That is what I'm talking about, that they are at a different level. If that was a Kenyan who made the statements he made, there would be a pariah, maybe in court or something like that.
Prof, what do you think? Lessons?
Lessons are many. First of all, I don't think this forum can exhaust them, but I just quickly run through them. The first one is this: Americans are fond of electing mediocre presidents.
They're fond of it?
Yes, electing mediocre presidents.
For example?
And people who are colorless, who have this jingoistic behavior, this is not the only one. Just in our lifetime, we have witnessed Ronald Reagan, and Ronald Reagan was exactly, Trump is a rebirth of Ronald Reagan. And so people who harass others, you know, or bullies, and he's a bully, and you know, they are not moral. You know, the question, people are passing, you know, judgments about Trump's arguments about women, and then so they wanted to inject morality in American politics. It's not about American politics, because from the very beginning, America is founded on a criminal ancestry. Because most of the people who went to the United States in the 17th century were sent to the United States by Great Britain because in exchange for freedom, because they were jailbirds in London. And so this is the criminal ancestry that you've witnessed today. So if you go there to preach morality, it doesn't work. The American people, half of them have now decided that they are telling the world that when a guy gropes women, fondles women without their authority, that is our star.
Can you fondle with authority?
Without the authority. And now, look, there are many other things. So they are saying, you know, a guy who describes women the way he did is correct.
But bring it home for me, Prof, because what we're talking about are the lessons that we can draw out of it. So for Senator, it was the fact that politics is local. He spoke the local language, what the average American wanted to hear.
Yes.
What for you?
So from the local perspective, you see, you can misread the political images of this country and think that people, what I think about the people is exactly what they think they would do. We are going into an election in 2017, and in 2017 there are people who already think the outcome is obvious.
True.
From the point of view of government, especially Jubilee, the lesson they learn is that unless they really reconfirm and reconfirm 10 times, they can get a surprise like the one that you have seen from Trump. But from the opposition side, it gives them hope that even when they think they are down, the game is not over until it's over. So this is the local lesson we learn from this. The uncertainty of politics is such that you will never know what happens until it happens.
The uncertainty of politics.
Yes, that's from the local point of view.
I think what we can draw from this is that you mentioned it, democracy is in crisis.
Totally.
What happened is Trump harnessed the resentment to establishment. That's what he did. And we need to look at the reasons for the resentment to this establishment. First of all, globalization. What was happening is a lot of laws were being made that were transnational, so they weren't domestically favorable to the people. So people started to feel disenfranchised. People were despondent. Apathy grew, and then you have the rise of these xenophobic parties. We saw it with Brexit as well. They just needed a change. Anybody would have won. It didn't have to be Trump. And that's why even if I was being insulted, the insult I felt over the past 8 years with the establishment has been more hurtful. So I'm okay, you can insult me with your words, but I've actually felt the impact in my life with establishment, because what's happening, well, the evolution within the 21st century is that democracy is beginning to fail. A select elite are now ruling, so they're not representative of the people. Corporates have taken over governments because governments are ruling with clemency towards corporates because of globalization. Corporates can sort of threaten governments. We're going to take our plants to China, so you lose jobs and taxes. So governments are now beginning to rule in favor of corporates. People are feeling they're not being represented, and they're not able to articulate this because also the media is not educating them. What's happening is the media is favoring infotainment and reality programs over political discourse, so they're not understanding what the issues are. They're getting angry, they're feeling disenfranchised, they're bitter, but they can't articulate it.
Do you think that's the case here?
No, we're not there. But that's why it's very easy for Trump to come in and say the problem is immigration. They say, yes, absolutely. Because they can then vent their anger. They can then vent their anger.
On anything.
And what Trump did was work on fear, which is a brilliant strategy in terms of communication. What Trump did was work on their inner fears, desires, and whims. He was speaking to their feelings. What Hillary was doing was policy. Remember, there have been a lot of people. One of the demographics that made Hillary lose was the non-degree holder in the working class. So these are people who weren't understanding Hillary's policies, but they were being driven emotionally in that Trump was making sense to them. He spoke to their inner fears, whims, and desires.
Let me pick it up from where you are, Jerry, in terms of speaking emotionally, because one of the things, at least I think for the Jubilee campaign so far, has to be to campaign on the basis of we've done this, that, and the other. They are trying very much to portray a picture of we have actually worked, voters in the second time. Is that a big fault?
I think the lesson we need to learn, what we need to learn is make our performance communication as Jubilee salient, so that it's tangible to people. People can understand what the SGR means for them. Because at the moment, you say SGR, most people don't know what it stands for, but what they need to know is that that means I can take a trip to Mombasa in 3 or 4 hours, which makes it cheaper for me to transport my goods, which then means I can pay my labor a little bit more. So we need to make it salient to people.
Even so, does it speak to emotions? Because I think the point that you brought out is the fact that Trump was able to capture emotions and translate, and fears, and translate, which are emotions, and translate that into a vote.
I mean, there is the fear of having cord in governance. I mean, that goes without saying.
Oh dear.
I think
it goes without saying.
You started very well, but you're missing part. You see, I think
there is that fear, and it is running. There is that fear.
Very good. And the movement for this emotional thinking started. The movement started from London during the Brexit. The fear that we are being swallowed by the other part of Europe, and then they voted the way they were. The Americans have been infected. But I think when we are doing this kind of conversation, we should also remember that as Kenyans, we learned the lesson of the strategy. What is the best way to get acceptable results after the elections? Because if you look at the two, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, but she lost the electoral college. In Kenya here, we have been grappling with the best way to do an election that can be accepted to all. And we have been heading to, some people have suggested we go to the electoral college. Now, you have seen serious demonstrations across America the whole of today, asking that, you know, what sort of the voting strategy.
We do have something similar in the sense that 24 counties. So we do have something similar.
So we are now the next frontier for Kenya is what is the best way to do how are we going to do our election?
And I hear what you're saying, Prof, but I want to dial you back just to the point of political strategy for well, obviously for politicians. And let me put it to you this way: if Trump managed to capture emotion, as Njeri has said, he spoke to various pain points. He talked about unemployment, you know, jobs are going abroad. What are the Kenyan pain points? And is any politician speaking to them?
To be honest, jobs are growing, the economy is growing, so Kenyans are not angry per se. Of course, there's rhetoric. There's rhetoric coming from the media and the opposition. And I think at the moment the dominant discourse is corruption, of which a lot is being done, more than with any other government. So once that is resolved, I can't see any reason why Kenyans would be discontent.
All right,
and also we have to remember there's no voter apathy here. In the US, only 49% turned out. Here there's no voter apathy, so we're winning.
Let me explain. I was going to
ask...
We are winning. I was going to ask... She's speaking for Jubilee clearly.
But
Senator, your opinion.
I was going to ask like him where she lives, because when she says there's no apathy, it's wrong. It's what I call the laptop democracy. This thing that I have delivered to a young child, a laptop, and you don't care that that child is in a school that doesn't have a floor, they don't have food, they are hungry. So, when you talk about SGR, which passes through Makueni County, and it's not going to benefit the locals one bit, and you talk about fares, maybe that person who is in Makueni, who are the bulk of the voters, will not even afford to be on that train, because it will have to be very expensive, so that we pay the loan.
But there will be a stop there where they can create shops and restaurants for people.
Do you know whether there are stops on the standard gauge railway? It will not. It has that. It doesn't have the trickle down effect. The apathy you're talking about is the fact that there are big things happening, and the small people don't realize. They cannot feel it.
I think the media's duty is to make that tangible to them on
if I was going to explain that the problems that an ordinary Kenyan is facing today is because Kafura walked away with 60 million in a bag, what do you think they would think? They would think this is something to clap about? That's what I'm talking about.
You know, Senator, Trump...
That you slept hungry because somebody stole.
Trump has an advantage. This guy is an actor. He has done a lot of films on reality TV. He has acted real life. Drama. Maybe he was even at one time given the position of a poor person and has acted poor. So he knows the spirit of America, what appeals to the American people. But there are other people on Pennsylvania Avenue, White House, who have spent most of their time there, the likes of Clinton. They do not know what the people feel. So that's why she...
Is that similarly the problem with Kenyan politicians?
Yes, the problem with Kenya is, you know, you see, especially the Jubilee administration, they keep telling about every other meeting that the president attends and the deputy president, they start saying what they have achieved.
That's the problem.
Now, they talk about this and they don't know whether people really see that as lies or truth. So when they get surprised in an election, and you get results like the one coming out of Trump, then people start blaming each other. They say, we didn't get the real problem. So I support what the senator is saying. If you're talking about SGR, how does it relate to us? How does it affect If you say you have fought corruption, and people know that money has been stolen from a sugar factory, then when you corrected that, how do they feel it? The change.
That's the problem.
This one is not happening. So therefore, if you get a sly politician, he might not be even a Raila Odinga, but he can be a guy without good shoes on, without a tie. And he might stand there like this film star from Madagascar, or this current president of Philippines, and start telling people that, look, these shoes I'm wearing cost me about just 400 shillings. 400 shillings. This shirt I'm wearing is probably, I bought that shirt from Kikomba, and there are 3 shirts for 100 shillings. So I belong to you. So you know what? I know very well that it's very difficult even to raise a shirt, just like me. Vote for me. You could get a comedian at State House with this kind of situation.
But like, can I reverse it? Is the reverse also possible? Where you have, for instance, Mike Sonko's politics, the senator of Nairobi. He certainly doesn't dress in any manner that would portray the picture of poverty. He seems to live a grand lifestyle, yet at the same time he seems completely relatable with his core base.
Yeah,
those who cannot fathomly have those things.
Because people, when he has the ambulances, when he has the fire brigades, when he goes and pays hospital bills, people relate his wealth and they see his wealth as a source of help for him, as opposed to the sort of thing where you paint yourself as a billionaire for your own sake and a big car. So they don't even fault him for wearing gold, because somehow they think that when he's there, he's going to come and pay school fees.
Add on to that,
so it's actually a paradigm shift. What I'm talking about today, and the lesson here is that for all of us who have the privilege of representing Kenyans, who have the privilege of being in power, there has to be a paradigm shift of how you relate the things that those lofty little things that look like you're going to have a railway from here to Tanzania, but at the same time it doesn't translate to Mama Mboga at all.
Let me add something there.
Jerry. No. I think where we are as an electorate, we're still aspirational in terms of how we vote.
Yeah.
We still look up to leaders, how they've achieved. We're still there. Now, that paradigm shift happened in the West, where when they were voting in Cameron, they were aspirational, and that's why the Conservatives, the wealthy, could pull in the Labour vote and so on. But that shifted. There wasn't a sort of change in dynamics. We're still at the stage where our electorate, our citizenry, is still aspirational. So with regards to what you're saying with a man with a shoe, and you know our culture, if you go with a bike and you're trying to win votes, they'll be like, this guy is poor, he's trying to get in so he can win. That is still our psychology. It's mine as well. It's still our psychology. There's one thing I wanted to point out, which I can draw parallels with from the Trump situation in Kenya, and it's something we really need to address. With regards to the polls and how they came out and how we were misled and we think maybe they were skewed. Yeah, the opinion polls. I think what happened is a lot of people were not admitting that they're voting for Trump. I mean, what we were saying was despicable. He had become an element of ridicule. It was, and of course, Americans have been socialized to be politically correct and so on. But what did come out is identity politics. Because even if people weren't admitting they were going to vote for him in the polls, which is, I think, what happened, because he had said some, you know, deplorable things.
The difference
let me finish. He had said some horrible things. Nobody wanted to be associated with him in the workplace, socially, and so on. So I think that's where the polls got skewed, because people weren't being honest when they were being questioned and interviewed. Now, what comes out of that is that no matter what you say, when you get to the ballot box, identity politics checks in. Now, we need to bring that back with us. And we keep saying and, you know, sort of berating people for not to vote, you know, whether it's in tribal blocks and so on. We need to understand it will happen. Let us address it. Instead of telling people, do not do this, let us address it. Let us discuss it. Let us explain it. Let us teach the citizenry through civic education about policy and what is important. I think that's one thing we can draw from there. What I'm saying here is identity politics prevails.
Yeah, true.
And we have seen that. Yes. And that's what happened. That's why there was disparity between the polls and the outcome, because of identity politics. All right. And you can draw those parallels with Kenya.
Fine. We're out of time.
We're
out of time, but I want to come round for a last round of comments of what you took away from this election, the U.S. election, and what you hope the lessons for Kenyan politicians will be. Very briefly, Prof, we'll start with you.
I just wanted to conclude from the point of view she was. I think identity politics, but also the politics of fear, because you don't want to state your position. You are breaking you are going away from the mainstream thought. So in that case, therefore, you know, when changes come, they don't announce they're coming. Kenya can also be a victim to that kind of situation. There's thousands of people in central Kenya, for example, who do not want to toe the line, but they fear. So they can surprise you during the elections. We have been arguing that, for example, there are basic things like corruption. I think if, for example, President Kenyatta himself disguised himself one morning and then boarded a matatu from city center to Umoja, and he goes through all the emotions, including seeing the police, I think he will come back a very different person, because he will now understand what people go through. But these things are reported in the media and they don't look real. They look like concoctions of some story. So if the leadership does not relate to the problems of the people, it can be surprised by that movement. Those who fear to vote, for example, for Raila Odinga in some places might vote. Those who fear to vote for Kenyatta in some places will change and vote. And then you look at the pollsters, you don't get them. So even the pollsters must revise their strategies of getting the correct picture of what happens. The correct picture can be okay, but the way they look at things is such that pollsters might also start sampling people, and the people might not tell them the truth. So how do you make sure that you capture their true mind if they realize that saying the truth will give the correct picture and they are living in fear? That is the biggest challenge that we are having today.
Change does not announce it's coming.
It doesn't announce, but it can come.
Wow. Okay, Senator.
My biggest lesson, and I'm drawing this from my participation in the Joint Select Committee on the elections, that all of us have forgotten that nobody is talking about the process. Nobody is talking about the nominations between the parties. Nobody is talking about how many people voted and how fast they voted. Nobody is talking about that you never heard of an electoral commissioner for a day. So we need to concentrate on the positive things and ignore the things that don't really matter. Because we think we are divisive, they are possibly more divisive than we are. We are only tribal and possibly other things. But there's a process that took a short period. So many people voted. Election results were announced. People have moved on. Obama and...
Well, they're on summer on the streets, a fair amount.
Yeah, well, demonstration, picketing, the sort of things that we were being tear gassed for. But this...
Obama have been arrested.
Some have been arrested. Some are still facing criminal cases, like my friend Senator Halwale. But you see, President Obama and Donald Trump are now seated in White House. We saw in the news. It's over. That is a lesson. So for you, the people in Jubilee, you first of all start preaching that the only way we can change this country, and we are hoping that you can have political goodwill in the process and the elections and in the laws where we instill something called biometric voting, a system which recognizes you from the time you walk in to the time you walk out. If one vote goes in, 3 votes don't come out. Simple.
Right. Jerry,
I think it's interesting that
so is it electoral college?
Let her have a say.
With the shenanigans of the men in black at Kasarani, I think it's very interesting that it's very interesting that they can bring that up. You'd have thought it's an embarrassment, so you'd keep it under wraps. But generally speaking, I think...
He's from Wiper.
I'm from Wiper.
Opposition. What I would take from this particular elections is that there's definitely a change in attitude globally. There's a shift in what we'd call the zeitgeist. I think also it's the beginning of the end of the American empire. I think we can start to say that if we look at it very broadly. I think we can start to see, and I'm talking about over the next 20 years, we can start to see China coming out, we can start to see Russia coming out, in terms of soft power as well, not just economic and sort of
military
power. Yeah, no, not just that. And I think also we need to look at the implications of a Trump president for us as a region. The war on terror, we don't know whether it's something he'll be as enthusiastic as his predecessor. I think that's something that would affect us. He has mentioned, or he has shown, lack of enthusiasm for NATO in a speech in July. So those are the things we need to contemplate and discuss. In terms of U.S. aid, I think Kenya is second in terms of receiving aid. We know he's very anti-abortion. There's a lot of programs, Planned Parenthood, social intervention, that have been sponsored by the Americans. These are things we need to consider and counter. So I think that's what we need to be talking about now.
All right.
And he has tyranny of numbers, by the way.
No, tyranny.
He does.
No, tyranny of states.
He has tyranny of states and numbers in the Congress.
And there we have it. I thank you all for your views. We're taking a break. We're back with the business after this. Stay with us. Thank you.